Welcome to the Strategic Plan, an audio series exploring 3 areas that are helping to shape bright, grounded, connected, and inspired students well beyond their years at Leo Baeck. We will dig into the topics of social, emotional well-being, and differentiated learning to see what these buzzwords are all about. And we will visit how teaching Jewish identity has adapted to meet changing times. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show. Welcome to this episode of the Strategic Plan. This episode focuses on Jewish identity and helping students to understand that Reform Judaism opens the widest possible tent to Jewish expression so everyone feels welcome. With me today, Daniel Abramson is the curriculum development director for the Tikkun Project at Leo Baeck. Welcome, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing today?
Doing really well, thank you. Let's jump right into the Tikkun Project. Can you explain what the word tikkun means to people that don't know what it means and what the primary types of tikkun there are?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you say tikkun, most people, tikkun is most closely associated with the idea of tikkun olam, which people take in different ways. But usually when you say tikkun olam, you're talking about repairing the world, doing community service, any kind of positive engagement that helps to make the world the kind of place that you would want it to be. The name of the Tikkun Project specifically, we didn't want to call it the Tikkun Olam Project because in an educational context, we wanted to sort of highlight that repair, social justice, the fixing of things that are broken actually needs to happen on many levels. So we focus at school at a couple of different levels of sort of repair and work. So we might say that we work on Tikkun Ha'am, like the restoration, the healing of the community, of the nation, or Tikkun HaNefesh, when students are thinking about how they develop their own habits, attitudes, and beliefs, like how work on ourselves and our ideas and attitudes towards the world. That is an important kind of step towards social justice and towards creating an equitable and inclusive society. So we talk about Tikkun HaNefesh, Tikkun Ha'am, and Tikkun Olam. And finally, we do talk about repair of the world in a global context. So we think about what students and teachers in the community can do to be engaged, positive difference makers in a global context.
And what was it? Tikkun Olam, Tikkun HaNefesh, and what was the first one?
Tikkun HaNefesh, Tikkun Ha'am, Tikkun Olam.
Ha'am. So just can you translate that to English for those? The Nefesh is the soul, but Ha'am is the
Tikkun Ha'am, repair
the nation,
is like
right?
The nation of people.
Yeah.
In this world.
Neat. So, can you talk a little bit about how, why it's so important to building Jewish identity, like especially in the context of Leo Baeck Day School? Why are we so focused as the school on including this in the curriculum?
Well, so it's interesting because the school for sure has a focus, but I don't think that we're different in many other schools. If you look at the mission and vision statements sort of across the spectrum, both of Jewish day schools, but also public schools and other faith-based schools, the idea that students should graduate with the capacity, like the inclinations, the awareness, and the knowledge necessary to make changes in the world, that's a common objective sort of across the spectrum. I think what's different is that when you take things seriously in an academic context, it means that you put it in the curriculum. If you want students to achieve in math, you make sure that your math curriculum is solid. So while across the spectrum, we have these really well-articulated visions of students being engaged global citizens, this project is really the first one that places those objectives right into the heart of curriculum. So the students are learning how to practice making changes in the world as they learn. No, it's not separate. It's not a promise of one day when you finish the curriculum, one day when you graduate from grade 8, you'll know how to do these things, but we'll wait until the end. This curriculum offers the opportunity for us to meet those objectives all along the way, and specifically in a Jewish context. So when we want students, when we think about what we want students to be able to do as they graduate grade 8, we want them to be engaged citizens. We want them to know how to make change, but we also want them to be able to anchor that within the context of the Jewish community. Students should be able to say, why is it important to me specifically as a Jewish person to be able to make sure that people aren't hungry in the community? What is it from our Jewish heritage, background, and history that suggests to us that oppression is bad in all times for all people and that it's necessary for us to take action? It's that integration of the idea of building Jewish character and linking it to the way that we engage in the world. That, I think, is the thing that's really special about this project. It helps students accomplish the mission and the objectives that we set out for them, but in a specifically Reformed Jewish context.
So how does that look in the day-to-day at Leo Baeck? Like how is it shared?
So students, when we look at the Ontario Ministry of Education curriculum, you can find units that lend themselves to being able to take action. Like, for instance, on a day-to-day basis, any grade 2 anywhere in Ontario is going to be studying water cycle conservation, water pollution, like how we engage with water and make sure that everybody has access to clean water. At Leo Baeck, that means in class, students are learning about the water cycle, but they're also participating in conservation projects. So right now, our grade 2s are in the middle of monitoring a little classroom hatchery. They have this aquarium with a chiller that's set up, and they're observing Atlantic salmon as they hatch, and they're working in partnership with the Toronto Zoo. So later in June, they're going to go actually put them back into the watershed. Like, it's a real conservation action that actually has an impact. So yeah, it's, you walk around the school and there's a buzz. Like, one class is making sandwiches to support people at Ve'ahavta. Another class is strategizing ways that Ukrainian newcomers to Canada could be better integrated into society. And then you walk by kindergarten and it smells like soup because they're learning about what hunger looks like for the community and applying their knowledge of healthy food to be able to make sure that all people have healthy food. So it really, you can tell on days when Tikkun learning is happening because there's just kind of a buzz and an activity.
So is the whole school doing these projects at the same time? Like, there's a designated time for these two, or is it kind of just all going on at different times? How does it fit into the schedule, I guess?
So it's interesting. It looks a little bit different in different grades. Grade 5 sort of has it woven through the narrative of lots of their units. When they're thinking about government, they're thinking about, as they learn how laws are made, they think about how could we be good advocates to be able to make changes to make things more fair. So that they might 1 month be learning with the local member of parliament, and then later, as they transition into learning about Indigenous communities in Canada, they may take that understanding about how to engage with government to try to propose changes that make it more fair for Indigenous communities here. Sometimes it's woven all the way across the year, and sometimes it focuses, like the grade 2 focuses specifically on one unit. So more and more, we're seeing spillover that when teachers and students are engaged in learning, where they get to really take action, their learning is purposeful. They can see that it makes sense and that it helps things and it helps people for real. That energy spills over into other units, and we've had it where students and teachers complete a unit, like their designated Tikkun unit, but then they apply the same kind of logic and thinking to their next unit. So more and more, this kind of learning that integrates Jewish texts and action and great teaching is blossoming across the curriculum, like inside and beyond the units that we call Tikkun units.
That's how I liked to learn when I was a student. I remember, like, purposeful learning is like, if I could see how this was going to affect my own life or someone else's life in the future, like, I was all in on that class. I was all in on that topic matter. And if I didn't see its like relevance in any way, I kind of tuned out. So that makes a whole lot of sense to me as like a former student who struggled in some ways and excelled in others. And I can see how that can really like affect a student because of that approach.
Yeah. Like, you think about the question that, like, the stereotypical question that we imagine students to ask, like, why are we even learning this?
Yeah.
Why are we learning this? What does this do? And we should, as educators, of course, always be able to answer that question. but by creating learning that know, like by design, the outcome is purposeful. You can, you put the problem ahead of the learning. Here's a challenge that we face in our community. How might we solve it? Kids know from the beginning that the thing that they're doing is purposeful. They know that it matters. They know that they have impact, and it's really kind of powerful when you hear a student in grade 2 articulating that they have the confidence to be able to make a change. I have a grade 2 from last year who at the end of the unit said it was really funny to be able to teach grown-ups what to know. Like, they were learning about water conservation, and the end of their unit, they had these water advocacy posters. It's really funny that we get to teach adults what to know. Well, yeah, it is. It's powerful. It's powerful when kids get to speak up and say, I can do this. I know how to do this, and I want to do it.
That's got to make it feel pretty good, like pretty proud of the program that you're running.
For sure. Like some of the moments that are that we hope for, but are somewhat unexpected. You can't anticipate when they're going to come. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from a parent with a picture about something that the student did outside of class. Like, it wasn't an expectation. It wasn't part of the homework. I got a picture the other day. There were two girls who celebrated their birthday on the same day. They're in grade 4, so they had been learning about homelessness and sort of the most important causes and impacts of homelessness in the city. They'd met with people from Ve'ahavta to sort of see what those impacts are on people here. So I got this photo. They had asked their parents, instead of loot bags, they wanted to make care kits for people who were struggling with homelessness in the city. Wow. So, like, in my inbox, I get this, like, look at what they did over the weekend. And it's amazing, because you know that they know what to do, and they believe in their hearts why they should be doing it, and they actually take action. Like, that's the best metric, right? Like, we aspire to equip students with the tools to be able to make change, and then you see they're doing it. Like, they just are doing it independently. They don't need anybody else's support to do it. They know how to do, they know what to do, and they take action.
And do you think, like, for me, I can speak for me again as a Leo Baeck alum and like someone who was pretty involved in the reform movement growing up, the ideas of Tikkun Olam and Tikkun Ha'am and Tikkun HaNefesh, they impacted my Jewish identity for sure. Do you think that it's like, how do you integrate the Jewish identity aspect into what you're doing? Like, because obviously what you're saying is universal. Like, you want to help the people in your community. You want to help yourself. You want to help your family. You want to do all the things that move the world forward. But how do you kind of integrate it into being a Jewish young adult and a Jewish student?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question. And there's a whole other, I think, episode of a podcast to talk about there.
Sure.
But, like, while I believe that it's true that any community that you ask are generally, their values are going to be aligned. Like,
totally,
what we talk about is that core central text. In Hebrew, we might say Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, that you love your neighbor like you love yourself. That, don't do unto others what you would not want them done unto you. I do believe that is universally true. You go to any community, and their value systems are going to be aligned. And like a sidebar, one thing that I would want listeners to know is that part of the ambition of the Tikkun Project is to work with other communities, and to see why other communities would take up the cause as well. So I don't think that taking action, like that Tikkun Olam, is specifically and in a limited way a Jewish kind of concept. I do believe that everybody does it, but I think that it's really powerful when students are able to look specifically at their own cultural inheritance, like our own traditional visions of what we as a people know and believe, and are able to use those traditions and those histories to be able to inform their actions. I'll give you like a very concrete example. I would suggest that any community you go to today if you ask them if slavery and oppression are wrong, they'll agree those are wrong. Those are not things that should happen in a society. And if you go into a Jewish community and say, like, where do you know that from? Like,
Right.
where, like, on what basis? I mean, like, of course it is wrong, but how does that touch you? A Jewish community might go all the way back to narratives of Egypt and
Right.
say, from the beginning, like, those stories tell us that nobody should live under oppression. And we might go more recently, when you think about the experience of the Holocaust, as Jewish people, really, like, today, what informs the adult Jewish community about lots of our sensibilities of how we should and shouldn't engage with others? Our historical experience with the Holocaust. It is a powerful understanding of why we are the way that we are in the world. And if you take that same question and you move it to another community and you talk to, like, the Black community in Canada, why is slavery and oppression wrong? They have a different set of cultural history, narratives, beliefs, and experiences that motivate them to be able to take action to make sure that the world is equitable. And I think that it matters. Even if the outcomes, even if we're all striving for the same outcome, I go back to that question that I posed before when students say, but why are we learning this? Like, okay, but why does it matter as a Jewish person that we do? It's a powerful and important question that we should pay attention to, because our sensibilities, the reason why we believe things to be true and important, are different. And I think that it's important that we examine them and share them, and it's prominent in what kids are learning when they learn about things like hunger or poverty, environmental stewardship. We should ask ourselves, why is it important as a Jewish person that I believe that the earth should be sustainable for all people?
Right. Do you have a favorite unit that you've done with your kids?
Well, I have to tell you, I know I've talked about it a couple of times. The grade 2 water unit is fun because it's like so powerful and hands-on. The kids are raising salmon in their classroom, and they're going to go release them into the watershed. It's just kind of magic watching them observe these fish in their fish tank. So that one stands out. Grade 6 do learning about immigration, and they look at a long picture of immigration in Canada. So they learn a little bit about historical narratives going back to like Sikh immigration to British Columbia, Chinese immigration, and they look at the life sort of along the railway, and throughout they're asking themselves the question: has Canada legally and ethically upheld its obligations to newcomers over time? And I think the question's powerful. Then we ask them, well, who do you know who has moved to Canada? So they do this, they do interviews with people that they know, like that could be grandparents, or that could be like a friend of the family. And when they take that question and they learn how to interview people with this lens of, I want to understand, how fair was this process for you? How well were you welcomed into Canada? It goes back to that purposeful thing. It makes that interview purposeful. And when you see students, their image of what it means to be an immigrant or a newcomer to Canada transform, that's powerful. It's maybe, it's not the same smiley, exciting thing as that happens with the release of the fish, but a year or two ago, one of the students at the end of the unit was sharing a reflection that he hadn't ever really thought, that the caregiver in the family, he knew that she wasn't originally from Canada, but he had never really processed the fact that it meant that she had to leave her own kids to
Right.
back home for somebody else to look at. And when you see these students having a powerful realization like that, like, oh, this is the nature of the world that I live in, and it matters how people are treated, and I want to make sure that newcomers to Canada are treated fairly because I care about them. That's exciting to me. When you have evidence that that really there's been an impact on the hearts and minds of kids, it's powerful.
I know you talked about how, like, in other communities, this is just as important and seen as something that we all kind of are aligned with and share. Can you talk about how you think maybe Leo Baeck is kind of a leader in this sector, or have they had an opportunity to be a leader and show other, schools or communities what we're doing?
Yeah, so we're in that. It's exciting. We're kind of at the beginning of the sharing stage. So recently we had the first GTA educators mini Tikkun conference. So we had some educators from different schools around the city to come together for a day of collaborative learning. So it was exciting to be able to see some of our local friends looking at the curriculum and sharing some ideas and weaving units together in ways that make sense for their own schools. And we now have a partner in Winnipeg at Gray Academy. Their kindergarten students are doing some learning based on the model from our kindergarten unit. And there's a school in Denver that next year is launching their own Tikkun Project. And there's a new local Muslim school, and their head of school came to our educators conference that we held just a little while ago, and seeing the intercultural dialogue around shared ideas about responsibility and community and individual well-being. That was exciting, because that's the vision of the project, is to take what we've learned so far, like take the approach that we've developed, and share it with other communities, and ask every community, what motivates you to make change? What are the core texts and the core stories and the historical cultural experiences that would motivate your students to make change? It's very exciting.
It's incredible. I commend you on all the work. As, again, someone who's very loosely associated with the school because of me just going there and growing up around it and being invested in it in a lot of very personal ways. I appreciate the work, and I want to thank you for the work that you do. And thanks for coming on, talking a little bit about it, and sharing everything you got going on with the Tikkun Project. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Strategic Plan audio series. I encourage you to keep learning about what creates true educational excellence and how a strong Jewish independent school is flourishing right here in Toronto. For more information, visit leobeck.ca, go to the About drop-down menu, and find all you need to know on the Strategic Plan webpage.